For Thanksgiving this year, things happened a bit differently than usual. My grandmother recently fell and broke her hip, rendering her unable to stand or move other than very slowly and for very short periods of time. This meant that this year, somebody had to pull up their socks and help in the kitchen. I offered up my talents, quite selflessly I might add, to this insurmountable challenge of truly epic proportions. The rest of my family begged me to order Chinese food. I assured them that with a little coaching from my grandmother, I would be able to pull it off. One very vivid moment stands out for me though. We were about to make her legendary top secret recipe for sweet potato cranberry casserole. Now let me explain that this is not just any normal casserole. Since before I could walk, I remember eating this on Thanksgiving, and it is as close as I have ever come to seeing God. This isn't a casserole. This is a religious experience. This is the single most delicious thing I have ever eaten, ever. This is the food that reminds me of home. However, up until that moment, that recipe had never been shared with another human being. Now, for the first time ever, I was going to know all the secrets of this magical dish. But before starting, I asked her the thing I have been itching to know my entire life. What makes this recipe so good? She smiles and replies, love and butter. But in my mind, those are the same thing. I must confess that I am an avid admirer of the culinary arts. During high school, I worked for 3 years at a banquet hall in a small town near where my parents live in Newmarket. Despite the late nights, long hours, and often physically and mentally exhausting work, being so close to a world-class kitchen with nothing short of the best staff around brought me back week after week. Most of the time, I worked as a server, where I earned the equivalent of a master's degree in intercultural relations, commercial hospitality, bridezilla management, and split-second decision-making. But sometimes I worked in the kitchen, where the magic really happens. Working weddings from dozens of different cultures, I learned so much about how food, community, and relationships grow and change within groups of people. I learned exactly why a Jewish wedding involves dancing with chairs and breaking bread, why Indian weddings are about family ties, not just personal relationships, why Russian weddings usually have an open bar, why traditional Chinese weddings have at least 8 courses, why stereotypes are meant to be broken, because every wedding is as unique and genuine as the people in it. And most importantly, what it truly means to be in union with another person. But through all of these experiences, there were a few common threads: love, relationships, community building, and of course, food. I recently read one of the quintessential cookbooks that any budding chef must read as part of their culinary journey, Le Guide Culinaire. Written in 1903 by Auguste Escoffier, it is the holy Bible of French cooking and is quite literally the textbook on French haute cuisine, still used by cooking schools around the world. In it, Escoffier depicts 5 mother sauces, the 5 sauces he felt were the basis for every significant dish in French cooking at that time. They are béchamel, velouté, espagnole, hollandaise, and sauce tomate. All of these sauces can be further decomposed into a stock and a roux, and occasionally some other vegetables, herbs, and spices. The most important part of the sauce is the roux, and the most important part of the roux is, you guessed it, butter. It suddenly occurred to me that this incredibly intimidating thing called French cuisine, that I had spent the bulk of my life understanding as extremely complex, layered with intricate detail and finesse-driven technique, was nothing more than a glorified butter sauce. The culmination of hundreds of years of experimentation and refinement could be summed up into one very simple, common ingredient. It was as if I had reached the Emerald City and met the wizard, only to have the curtain pulled back and the truth exposed to me. 5-star restaurants start with the same simple ingredient that I have loved my entire life. The same one my grandmother kept secret from me all those years. The same one you have probably eaten in this very cafeteria. The same one you will, in all likelihood, eat tonight. Over the last year, I have had the amazing opportunity to take my love of food and act in service with my talents through a local organization called the Working Center, particularly through the kitchen. Every day, volunteers from all walks of life meet and gather and work in the kitchen to create healthy, fresh, vegetarian, and vegan food for the Queen Street Cafe across the street, where it is sold in a judgment-free zone for reasonable prices. The aim of the Working Center is to build community and mend lives through various services, but nowhere have I seen this occur more readily than in the kitchen. Almost every time for the last 2 terms, I have ventured down to Kitchener just after lunchtime, walked into the kitchen, washed my hands, grabbed an apron, and opened my heart to the opportunity of making food with other people. And a funny thing happens when you take people and food and a common goal and put them all together with a little love and occasionally a whole lot of butter. You build community. I've seen firsthand how cooking together can break down barriers, open doors, and change lives. I've worked side by side with refugees, master's students, professors, chefs, criminals, physically and mentally disabled individuals, travelers, foodies, ex-military individuals, die-hard peace activists, and every imaginable stretch of life in between. And guess what? The results have never been more delicious. Around the oven, we are all just people. It doesn't matter where we have been or where we are going. It only matters where we are right now. Food has the power to transcend time and space, demolish cultural norms, break down ethnic, cultural, and linguistic barriers, and transform lives. James Beard, the famous American chef, food writer, and philanthropist, once said, "Food is our common ground, a universal experience." And isn't it funny how every major celebration in every major culture centers around food? Whether you are getting married, having an important business meeting, or just catching up with an old friend, food has the power to bring people together. As a CASA study conducted in 2003 found, families that eat dinner together suffer much lower rates of drug abuse, depression, and alcoholism, and were much more open to communicating about difficult issues. I found that in my own life, the most important conversations, the kind that forever shape you into the person that you are going to become, have all centered around food. Whether at the dinner table, the bar on a different continent thousands of miles from home, the potluck at the church you've grown up in, or the cup of coffee with old friends, or even the wedding to be the witness to a start of a great journey, food is a central part of building community. And when you are cooking together, you find it doesn't matter what you are making, just that you're together, growing, and crafting something more than just a delicious meal. As Jacob mentioned in his peach speech from last year, maybe the secret to building peace isn't complicated government programs or numbers-driven results. Maybe the secret is relationships, community, and simply getting to know one another. In Louisiana, they have a saying, "First, you make a roux." This has 2 meanings. Firstly, that in order to change something, you must do. You cannot learn passively. You cannot simply be witness and expect to grow. You must make in order to receive an outcome. And secondly, that all recipes, no matter how complicated, no matter the people, the cultural differences, the ethnic diversity, the political landscape, the history of the problems between them, or any other small or big details, begin with the same simple, common, recognizable ingredients. Maybe peace is like a cake, and the secret ingredient is just community, relationships, and building connections between people. And maybe the secret ingredient to building community is spending time cooking together, enjoying food together, celebrating together, and recognizing the beauty in life through a shared meal and an open heart. And maybe the secret to delicious food, capable of building communities and changing lives, is as simple as adding one key ingredient, the kind of ingredient you've grown up with, the kind of ingredient that an entire style of culinary artistry is built around, the kind of ingredient that is worth keeping secret until just the right moment. Love, or butter, but in my mind, those are the same thing.